After concluding fourth quarter drills just a few days ago in Tallahassee, Jimbo Fisher and company ready for spring practice in just a few weeks in Tallahassee. We bring in Josh Parcell, associate producer at ESPNU, to talk about Florida State football. Of course, the reigning ACC champions coming off that downer against Oregon in the national semifinal. Hey, Josh, how are you?
Doing well, Mark. How are you?
Doing just fine. Hey, let's dig in on this football team. Of course, the obvious point is that Jameis Winston is going to be playing in the NFL. So the Jameis Winston era, a short one in Tallahassee, but extremely successful with just the one loss. So Sean Maguire, we got a chance to see him against Clemson last year. Played pretty well. Threw for 300 yards, a touchdown pass in that effort that they probably should have lost that football game, but somehow pulled it out like they have many other times. So just your thought about the quarterback position. Maguire in place, but he's going to have some competition.
Yeah, Florida State has stockpiled a lot of young, talented quarterbacks. Maguire, kind of the most experienced of the group, but you've got J.J. Constantino, who's been on campus for a couple years, and then a few incoming freshmen, Deondre Francois, DeAndre Johnson, both guys out of Florida who have a lot of potential. And I actually got the chance to watch Francois and Johnson play at the Under Armour All-American game this past January, and both of them were impressive. It was DeAndre Johnson actually looked a little bit better to me, even though he's not the higher rated of the two. But there's a lot of people in Tallahassee that think that Francois could push for that job as soon as this fall.
Yeah, John Franklin's a kid as well that has gotten some attention. He may not turn out to be a quarterback. He's a track standout that they may move down the road to running back or defensive back. Not just Jameis Winston leaving, of course, a number of other talented players with a lot of accolades when you talk about Cam Irving and Trey Jackson along the offensive line, Rashad Green, the most prolific wide receiver in Florida State history. So just your thoughts about the offense and losing those guys and the ability for this offense to reload this spring.
Yeah, you talked about the offensive line. That is always the hardest group to replace for any program, let alone Florida State. And they've recruited extremely well across the board, but you cannot replace the experience factor and the chemistry that you lose when 4 starters depart to graduation. So that's going to be a big challenge for Florida State this fall, is how can they get that offensive line to gel, because they have plenty of talent at receiver, they have plenty of talent at running back, even if it's young, and it's going to all come down to the offensive line, because when you've got a young quarterback, you've got to be able to protect him, especially early in the season.
Who's going to make plays for this football team, Josh? Of course, Dalvin Cook. How good is this guy? He pushed a couple of future NFL running backs out of the way to gain most of the carries for this football team. He was that good. So just to kind of shape up the skill position players for us.
Yeah, Cook is poised for a big year, and especially early in the year when they're trying to figure out the quarterback situation, they're going to rely on Cook a lot to make plays for this team. And they've got some good young receivers as well. Ermon Lane is going to be a guy who really breaks out this year. Started to show flashes at the end of last season, like Cook. And you've got Jesus Wilson, Travis Rudolph. Rudolph is going to be a big player as well. So there's a lot of good young talent. Another name to keep an eye on, I think, is George Campbell. He's another guy that I saw at the Under Armour All-American game. He's long. He's very athletic. Just a tall, rangy guy, similar to the Kelvin Benjamin types that you've seen come out of the Florida State in recent years. And he could be an impact player from day one as a true freshman for Florida State. So there's no shortage of talent on the outside for Florida State, that's for sure.
With all the attention the offense gets, Josh, the biggest difference in this team from 2013 to 14 might have been on defense. Still extremely talented last year, but just rock solid in 2013. 7 starters come back from a defense that was still extremely good in spots last year. Just your thoughts about how we look at this defense going through the spring and into the fall.
Florida State is really reloaded on defense for the last several years. They lose talent year after year, and there's no difference this season. Losing Goldman and Mario Edwards and some of those guys, they really need to rely on some younger guys up front. Josh Sweat is arguably the best defensive end in the country coming out of high school. He's going to be a guy that could play very early on. And Florida State has made a name for themselves in the last several years with having just a ferocious pass rush. And it's really generated up front. There's some issues at linebacker with Florida State, actually, and I was talking to a few guys who covered the team, and they said that linebacker is really a key question for them. They lost a couple guys to injury. Northrup is a guy who tore his ACL, is going to miss the year. And then another player, blanking on the guy's name, Kane Dobb, transferred just recently to a junior college. So losing a couple guys that really affects their depth at linebacker. But they do have a couple guys coming back in the secondary, namely Jalen Ramsey, who started to come along last year and could be an All-American this season. So they just reload at Florida State, and there'll be plenty of talent. It'll just be some new names we got to get used to.
Yeah, I'm hearing there's 8 kids that have enrolled early. That's a Florida State record. I think the one guy that gets Seminole fans really excited on the defensive side is Derwin James, early enrollee at defensive back. He's a stud. Also, Ryan Green, who they've tried at running back his first 2 years, got 39 carries his first 2 years. They've moved him to DB to try to retool the secondary there. Anything else that stands out that we should look forward to? We're 2 weeks away from spring practice here in Tallahassee.
I think it's just all about replacing the quarterback. I mean, Jameis Winston was the driving force behind their last 2 seasons, and he bailed them out of a lot of bad situations in the last 2 years. Sometimes he was the reason that got them into those situations, but then he was able to get them back out in the second half of so many comebacks last year. So all eyes are on the quarterback in Tallahassee. I mean, really the last time Florida State has had this much uncertainty under center was, you have to go back to 2007 when Christian Ponder was a freshman. I mean, ever since then, they've known who their guy was going to be. Even when Jameis stepped on campus and redshirted for a year, they knew he was the guy the second he got under center in spring ball as a redshirt freshman. So this is the first time in a long time that Florida State's really had to make some decisions at quarterback, and they're not really sure what they've got. So that's going to be a big, big thing to keep an eye on this spring.
Josh Parcell of ESPNU joining us. Hey, Josh, before I let you go, of course, Florida State's been here. Then there's that gap with Clemson, kind of isolated by themselves in second place for the last few years, and then the rest of the ACC, especially the other division. You can throw a blanket over everybody. Do you see anything changing this fall?
I think Clemson has a chance to win that division, but fact of the matter is the ACC is not going to be very much better this year than they were last year. A lot of the teams, for as average as they were, lost a lot of experienced players. Virginia Tech might have as much experience back as anyone, and they went 7-6. So there's really just not a lot of firepower outside of Florida State and Clemson. Louisville's looking to replace its quarterback. Georgia Tech lost a lot of power at running back on the outside. All of their running backs are gone. They have Justin Thomas back, and they gave Florida State a run. But it's going to be Florida State's division to lose. I mean, Clemson can give them a run, but Florida State on paper, even without the experience, has the most talent in the conference.
All right, Josh, good stuff. We appreciate the information and the insight. Have a good one.
Hey, thanks, Mark.